Hello everyone, and welcome to Hill Street. Today's story is My Neighbor's Secret. If you end up enjoying this story, please leave a like. And if you enjoy hearing stories from me, please subscribe and become a resident of Hill Street and let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Now, let's get to this nightmare. When I was a kid, we had a neighbor across the street that we called Pervy, and for a good reason. On several occasions, this man made my sisters and I extremely uncomfortable, especially my older sisters who were 12 and 14 at the time. To paint a picture, there were a couple of specific instances that earned him the nickname. But let's start with his appearance. If you have seen the TV show King of the Hill, he looks just like the character Dale. If you haven't seen that show, picture the bad man from the movie The Lovely Bones. If you haven't seen that either, just picture the skinniest, palest white man with short, dirty blonde hair, a majorly receding hairline, tiny eyes, and a long nose. His real name was Randy, but we didn't know that for a very long time. Now, to explain his actions that led up to the perfectly fitting nickname. There was a day that my, at the time, 14-year-old sister was riding her bike up and down the street, just enjoying being a kid. It just so happened that she looked over at his house on her way back down the street, directly at his living room window, only to lay her eyes upon his genitals. Perhaps one could say he was in the privacy of his own home, but one could also say that she shouldn't have been looking into his window. But personally, I say that no adult should be standing naked in front of a window when they know their neighborhood is full of children. My mom called the police and explained the situation, but they were of little to no help. They told us that without proof, there wasn't much they could do for us. My sister never rode her bike again after that day. We couldn't prove that it was an intentional act of public indecency, nor could we actually do anything about it. But this event placed red flags all the way around his yard from that day forward. My sisters and I avoided this man at all costs, and yet he was still very prevalent in our childhood. There was other occurrences that built up to our intolerance towards Pervy, none quite as graphic or disturbing as the first, but uncomfortable nonetheless. On another occasion, Pervy came to the neighborhood pool wearing nothing but boxers, tattered, ripped, and torn. My mother called the police at this point. Maybe being an overprotective mother, or maybe it was pure instinct. But once again, there was no help for us in this matter. Pervy was just sent away from the pool area and told to come back with a proper swimsuit. Thankfully, he didn't come back. Another time, my sisters were outside playing with some of their friends from up the street. The majority of them were boys, because the majority of the kids in the neighborhood were boys. Apparently, Pervy was feeling ballsy that day and told my sister's friends that they better stay away from his girls. This next interaction with him was not the last, but it's the last one I will tell before I get into the real story. One day, my aunt came over to hang out with my mom, and she brought my younger cousin with her so we could all play together. I was about 9 or 10 at the time. My sister and cousin were 6 or 7, so we asked if we could go outside and play in the front yard. My sister and I would often play in our front yard without supervision. my neighborhood was considerably safe despite the weirdo across the street. And our front door was always wide open during the day, so they gave us permission, and out we went. My aunt had a small old white Honda that was already beat to hell and back, so she didn't mind that we were climbing all over the hood, roof, and trunk of the car. Obviously, Pervy minded. He minded very much. He opened his door and peered around with only his head, eyes and mouth wide open at us, and he just stared. Then he slowly started to step back into his house and closing the door, all the while still staring at us, eyes and mouth still wide open. At the time, it scared me so bad that I ran inside, crying, telling my mom what happened. She had had enough. Let's just say, this story ends with my mom confronting him in his driveway and throwing the TV remote at him. Yes, she got it back for anyone who's wondering. As time went on and we aged, we became less and less afraid of Pervy and more annoyed, inconvenienced by him. My sister, our friends, and I used to play a game where we would dare each other to go knock on his door whenever he wasn't home, just to see if someone would answer the door. I guess in our child brains we thought someone was inside regardless of him living alone and his car being gone. The game was fun, exhilarating, and nerve-wracking, which is the perfect potion for a bored group of kids on a summer day. As fun as the game was, it came to a very abrupt end one day when it was my turn to knock on his door. Like usual, I crept up his porch stairs, tiptoeing on each step, avoiding making any noise that would give away my presence. I lifted my fist to knock, but before my knuckles met the door, I noticed something different. This time, the door was open, very slightly, just a small crack, but it was definitely open. I don't know what came over me. I don't know where the bravery came from, but for some dreadful reason, I entered his home. It smelled stale, like a Goodwill, with a hint of cigarettes. The layout was very boring. He had very little furniture and almost zero decor besides a couple of what appeared to be fake plants on the side table in his living room. I began to venture further into his home, my eyes skimming the room before noticing a small framed photo hanging on the wall just before a hallway. In the photo, Pervy stood, smiling next to a plump blonde woman. Her hair was curly and of medium length, her skin pale, and her eyes were bright blue like the sky. She was very pretty, too pretty for someone like Pervy, but they appeared to be a couple by the way their arms were interlocked. But how had I not seen this woman before? Where is she? What happened to her? As I walked down the hall, I approached the bedroom door, and a smell washed over me, one I had never smelled before, and my heart dropped to the pit of my stomach. I placed my hand on the doorknob and opened it very slowly, unsure of what I was going to find behind it, unsure of the source of the horrifying smell. When I opened the door, I was astonished to see a beautiful bedroom decorated with pink roses, dead and fresh. They were everywhere. on the walls, on the tables, dressers, and TV stand. The bed was huge, with a large fluffy white comforter spread across very neatly. Despite the dried up rose petals on the floor, the room was very clean. I was so entranced by the sight that the unidentified smell began to slowly disappear. I walked around the room, running my hand across the collage of flowers, smelling a couple here and there, and trying to figure out what all of this meant. As I was taking everything in, I heard a car door close. My heart dropped once again. It was too late for me to make a run for the back door, and the window in this bedroom was covered by a large dresser, so there was no way out. Terrified and unsure of what to do, I quickly slid myself under the bed and held my breath, hoping and praying that Pervy would go into the bathroom for a shower, or maybe he had just forgotten something at home and needed to grab it before heading back out to wherever he spent his days at. As I listened to his footsteps moving through the living room, I could tell he was being cautious. He knew someone else was there. I knew he knew. It was such an intense feeling in my chest. Although he had not entered the bedroom yet, I closed my eyes and turned my head away from the door, like a child, believing if I couldn't see him, he couldn't see me. Suddenly, it became dead silent. I didn't hear his footsteps anymore. I couldn't hear a single thing. Still, with my head facing away from the door, I opened my eyes again, only to see big, bloodshot eyes staring back at me. Bright blue like the sky. A lonely blonde curl was hanging down next to the right eye, almost covering it, but not quite. I let out the heaviest, loudest, most blood-curdling scream I have ever done in my life. I felt this scream boil up from inside my stomach, through my lungs and heart, up my esophagus, and vibrate out of my mouth, echoing through my own ears and shaking my brain. At this point, I had no more questions. I had no more desire to remain hidden until the coast was clear. Almost as soon as the scream left my mouth, I leapt out from underneath the bed, threw the dresser to the floor, flung the window open, and practically flew out. I ran back to my house so fast that I didn't even feel my feet hit the ground. Shaking and panicking, I told my mom what I had found in his home. The look on my face must have sold her, because she didn't ask any questions. She just dialed 911. The police came and questioned me. Then, after hearing my story, went over to Pervy's house and asked if they could go inside and take a look around. To my amazement and utter bewilderment, they came back out less than 15 minutes later, laughing and shaking Pervy's hand. They found nothing. They didn't believe me. They thought it was just a kid making up a story to cover the fact that she had broken into someone's home and got caught inside. But I know what I saw, and Pervy knows what I saw. I don't know how he did it. I don't know where he put the body, or how he hid it so quickly. From that day forward, I did everything in my power to stay out of his path, no matter what, and for the most part, I was successful. But I'm still waiting for the day that the truth comes out. And I have an odd feeling that Pervy is still waiting to get his revenge.